You have never experienced time moving backward, not once. You have never watched a shattered glass leap from the floor and reassemble itself into perfection. You have never seen smoke gather from the air and return neatly into a cigarette. You have never grown younger overnight. Every memory you carry points in the same direction. Forward, it feels obvious. Natural, almost boring in its certainty. Of course, time moves forward. What else would it do? But here is the unsettling truth. The fundamental laws of physics barely care about direction. Write down the equations governing motion, electromagnetism, even much of quantum mechanics, and reverse the variable of time. In many cases, the mathematics still works. The formulas do not scream when you flip yesterday and tomorrow. They remain symmetrical, calm, indifferent. Yet your experience is not symmetrical reality as you know it. Has a direction, causes come before effects. Eggs break, but do not unbreak. Conversations happen, then become memories. The past feels fixed. The future feels open. There is an arrow embedded in your existence, and it points only one way. This mismatch is not trivial. If the laws beneath reality do not demand forward motion, then why does everything you touch obey it? Why does your body age in one direction? Why does decay dominate construction? Why does every moment fall irreversibly behind you? Time behaves like a one-way street. You can walk forward along it, but there is no turning around, no reversing traffic, no cosmic permission to retrace your steps. The structure of your experience forbids it completely. And that is where the mystery begins. Because if forward motion is not strictly required by the deepest equations, then its persistence must come from somewhere else, from a deeper statistical rule, from a hidden asymmetry, from something woven into the fabric of reality that makes backward motion not impossible, but unimaginably improbable. Understanding that hidden rule will explain why time only moves forward, and why that simple fact should disturb you more than it comforts you. The reason time moves forward has a name, entropy. It does not shout. It does not announce itself with dramatic force. It operates quietly, statistically, almost invisibly. Yet it governs the direction of everything you have ever experienced. Entropy measures disorder. More precisely, it measures the number of possible arrangements a system can have. There are countless ways for a room to be messy. There are very few ways for it to be perfectly organized. Probability favors disorder. So disorder grows. Drop a glass on the floor. It shatters. The fragments scatter into one of countless chaotic arrangements. For that glass to reassemble itself, every shard would need to return to its exact original position with perfect alignment. The laws of physics do not forbid this, but the probability is so astronomically small that it effectively never happens. Entropy increases. Heat spreads from hot objects to colder surroundings. Perfume diffuses through a room. Stars burn their fuel and exhaust it. Structures decay. Bodies age. Energy disperses. The future is simply the direction in which entropy is higher. This is not a command imposed by the universe. It is a statistical inevitability. There are more ways for things to be disordered than ordered. So systems naturally evolve toward those more numerous states, and you are not separate from this rule. Your body is a thermodynamic system. Your brain is a biochemical engine operating within this gradient. Every thought you have, every memory you store occurs inside a universe sliding toward higher entropy. You remember the past because it contains lower entropy states that left structured records. You do not remember the future because those records have not formed. Disorder has not yet unfolded into your neural architecture. Entropy is the silent dictator behind your experience of time. It decides which direction feels natural. It makes forward motion overwhelmingly likely. And because of it, the universe does not need to forbid backward time. It simply makes it so improbable that you will never witness it. Entropy does not just shape stars and shattered glass. It shapes your mind. Your brain is not a passive observer floating above physics. It is a physical system embedded within the same thermodynamic gradient as everything else. The neurons firing inside your skull obey the same statistical rules as collapsing buildings and cooling coffee. And that means your experience of time is constrained by entropy. You remember the past. You do not remember the future. That simple asymmetry defines your entire existence. Memories are physical records. They are structured patterns encoded in neural connections. For a memory to exist, a lower entropy state must leave a trace as it evolves into a higher entropy one. The past leaves footprints because entropy increases away from it. The future leaves none. You can imagine tomorrow. You can simulate possibilities, but imagination is not memory. It is a projection built from fragments of the past. Your brain recombines stored information and calls it prediction. It feels forward-looking. But it is constructed backward. You are neurologically built to move in one direction. Every thought you have relies on stored traces. Every decision you make depends on information carried from earlier states. Your identity itself is anchored in memory. Without recollection, there is no narrative self, no continuity, no sense of personal history. If time flowed backward, your mind would function differently. You would remember the future and forget the past. Causes and effects would invert. But such a brain would require entropy to decrease toward what we call the future. It would require a universe fundamentally unlike the one you inhabit. You are trapped in the arrow because you are made of it. The forward direction is not just an external rule, it is written into your neural architecture. It dictates how information is stored, how perception is assembled, how consciousness feels like a continuous stream. You do not merely observe time moving forward. You are constructed in such a way that forward is the only direction you can experience. Because it means you can only ever look one way. Now the terror becomes clear. Time does not merely move forward. It refuses to turn around. Every action you take falls instantly into the past, locked behind you. Every word spoken becomes permanent. Every mistake becomes uneditable. The universe does not provide an undo button. It does not allow revisions. Irreversibility is not dramatic. It is quiet, constant, absolute. You cannot unage a single day. You cannot retrieve a lost hour. You cannot reassemble a broken relationship the way shattered glass might theoretically reassemble in equations. In reality, entropy ensures that what is done stays done, and that permanence gives weight to everything. If time could move backward, nothing would truly matter. Regret would dissolve. Death would not feel final. Loss would be temporary. Consequences would be negotiable. You could test decisions without risk, knowing you could always rewind. But you cannot. When someone leaves, they do not return to an earlier state. When a moment passes, it does not circle back. The arrow keeps pointing forward, indifferent to your preferences. That is terrifying because it means life is not a rehearsal. There is no second draft of your 20s, no alternate timeline where you redo the conversation. A forward motion of time ensures that every choice carves something permanent into reality. Aging becomes proof of this horror. Your body changes without permission. Cells accumulate damage. Systems slow. The mirror becomes a record of entropy's quiet authority. You move toward a future you cannot fully see, and you cannot reverse direction. Death stands at the end of the arrow, not as a dramatic interruption, but as a thermodynamic certainty. The terror is not just that time moves forward. The terror is that it never pauses. It never asks if you are ready. It never considers whether you have unfinished business. It advances with mathematical patience, and you are carried along, unable to step backward even once. And yet, without this forward motion, nothing would hold together. Irreversibility is terrifying, but it is also the foundation of meaning. Without a fixed past and an open future, there would be no causality, no story, no growth. Events would not build upon one another. They would blur into symmetry, interchangeable and weightless. If time flowed both ways, consequences would dissolve. A promise would not bind, a mistake would not scar, a sacrifice would not matter. The very idea of responsibility depends on a direction that does not reverse. Forward motion creates stakes because you cannot go back. Your decisions acquire gravity because moments cannot be replayed. They become precious. The arrow of time transforms ordinary actions into irreversible commitments. It turns fleeting experiences into defining chapters. A static universe, viewed from outside, may already contain everything, but from within, a forward gradient of entropy creates narrative. It ensures that information accumulates, that memories stack, that identity deepens rather than resets. Growth requires irreversibility. Learning requires that the past stay fixed while the future remains unseen. Love requires risk. Risk requires uncertainty. Uncertainty exists only because you cannot access what lies ahead and cannot rewrite what lies behind. The terror you feel when confronting time's one-way motion is inseparable from the value you assign to life. The fact that you cannot rewind a conversation is what makes honesty urgent. The fact that you cannot relive a year is what makes presence powerful. Forward motion creates mortality. Mortality creates significance. If you were free to reverse time, existence would flatten into repetition. Nothing would be lost, but nothing would be earned. The arrow is what gives texture to experience. It carves difference between before and after. Time only moves forward. That is frightening because it traps you inside consequence. But it is also the only reason your choices echo, your relationships matter, and your life forms a story instead of a loop. The arrow points ahead. And because it does, this moment counts